like to invite everyone to please stand. Thank you, everyone. On behalf of the Johnston family, would like to welcome you all to the family and friends service of Brother Blair Johnston. My name is Bishop Paul Arden, and I'll be conducting this service this evening. We have a pianist today, and that is Blair Johnston Jr., who's a grandson, and our chorister is Lara Johnston, who is a daughter-in-law. We'll begin this service this evening with an opening hymn, Families Can Be Together Forever. After the opening hymn, the invocation will be offered by Ben Fell.
Sure. Our dear Father in heaven, as we gather here as friends and family to remember the life of Grandad, we invite thy Spirit to be with us, that we can be comforted and led by thee, that we can cherish these memories and the experiences and the lessons that we've all learned from Grandad or from Blair. We're thankful for the time that we have together, that we can share these experiences, and we say these things in the name of the Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I think it's important also just to mention this evening those that couldn't make it tonight, and we're so grateful for the Templeview Stake, our leaders, for providing this building for us this evening, and also to our leaders for also providing the live stream that many of family and friends are able to watch tonight. The program tonight will involve musical items shared by family and friends, and in between each musical item we will have an opportunity for those to share some memories and thoughts on Brother Johnston. We'll begin with our first musical item, which will be by the grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and then we'll have a moment after that for some sharing of memories. I'll try stand up after every 3 or 4 memory. I think that'll be the best way to gauge.
Hello, I'm Tony Johnston, Blair's brother, but I'm going to read some notes from David, my elder brother, who had a very special bond with Blair from early in life, and I think might be shedding some light on a part of Blair's life that not many of us are familiar with. In fact, I was interested to read some of David's comments myself. So David says, "I've been privileged to have Blair as my big brother for 77 years. Although I don't remember the first couple of years very well, I clearly remember a wonderful young man who would turn up at home from time to time, bearing gifts and spoiling me rotten for a few weeks, until he disappeared to the bush again, leaving me inconsolable. It was only much later that I learned he actually had a job to go to. Those gifts, I might say, included a joey, a lamb, and a succession of dogs and guns. I'm not sure if he ever realised how great an influence his attention to me in those early years had on my life choices. From when I was in the cot, he perhaps unwittingly taught me the importance of keeping fit by encouraging me to do chin-ups on a broom handle which he had placed on the cot's side rails. He also taught me how to roller skate, with me standing on his feet and skating at breakneck speed around a large veranda of our own old Queenslander. I was about 3 or 4 years old at the time, and that was one of my first lessons in risk-taking. I was so proud when he gave me my own baby skates and I was able to fly solo. On 3 occasions he tried to send me bows and arrows through the mail from somewhere in the outback. The first 2 packages arrived broken in transit, but the third arrived intact and provided me with many months of learning fun in our backyard, and the skill to use Tony as target practice in years to come. One day Blair arrived home with an air rifle and a tin of pellets, and for days taught me how to load and shoot. After he left for work and not wanting to wait until his next visit, I removed the rifle from its secure storage, a wardrobe, by myself, and decided to practice my newly acquired skills on anything and everything under the house. Strangely, the rifle disappeared soon after, but Blair had already instilled in me a real taste for shooting and has been a passion of mine ever since. Looking back at those early years, it is no wonder that I saw Blair as my action man hero. His whole life to me was an adventure, and that is what I wanted for myself. In later years we remained close, and whilst he was no longer my action man, I'll always treasure those early memories of him. I might say that in later years, I think David became Blair's technical consultant. Blair had a succession of passions, as I'm sure you all know, and David, with his electronic expertise, became a source of advice on a number of those. They spent many hours on the phone together chatting about things. I am grateful to him for the love and interest he showed in his much younger sibling and for the inspiration and guidance he gave me. I'll leave it at that.
One of my early memories of my dad was him giving me responsibility sometimes. I don't know why. And sometimes I probably took advantage of that. On one occasion, when we lived in the Gap, we lived on a very steep hill, and I coerced my siblings and some other kids on the street to tie all our bikes together and paraphernalia and take them to the top of the hill and ride down the hill. As you can imagine, this did not go well. Dad did not chastise me greatly, and thereafter still trusted me with responsibility with my siblings, amazingly. Uncle Tony talking about guns. Mind you, when I was about 10, Uncle Tony and Uncle David lived not far from our house, within walking distance even, and so we could go and visit them regularly, and I used to think they were the most handsome young men as a 10-year-old. When we lived out at Samford, I also had an experience with Dad with his guns, and not that I've carried on that passion as some of my siblings have, but we lived in a home which is now Lacey and Mike's home, much loved family home, and sometimes it would flood around this home, so much so that it would come up almost to the house, and so all the paddocks would be flooded with water, and we would have all sorts of paraphernalia floating past the house. And Dad set me up with one of his air rifles out one of the bedroom windows and had me practicing on moving targets, going past the house as they were floating down the stream in this floodwater, which I managed to actually make a few hits. As a little person, I can remember Dad, living in Melbourne, we had a cubby house that was quite a big cubby house, and Dad on occasion would have sleep outs with me in this cubby house, which I thought was just an amazing experience. We would get eaten by mozzies, but we would share stories, and it's just a very happy memory. Thank you.
That's my baby making a racket, so I thought I better fill the noise with something else. I've had to take some notes because as soon as I get emotional, all my words leave my head. But the memory that stayed most with me about Granddad, and Granddad actually always brings it up too, which makes it even more special, is from when I was a little girl. Mum and Dad had a swing set right up in the back corner of the yard, and Granddad would push me on that swing for, it felt like all day in little kid time, and he would just let me talk, and I'd chat away about whatever was on my 6-year-old little mind, and he'd listen like it was the most important conversation in the world. People say you remember more about how someone makes you feel more than what they say or do, and Granddad made me feel like he had all the time in the world just for me. That's such a rare and beautiful thing, to feel seen and heard. It's a memory I hold close, and now as a parent, it's a good reminder to me to always listen to my boys and to just enjoy them, because Granddad's taught me that those little ordinary moments are actually the ones that really mean a lot. I'll always remember Granddad as this big barrel-chested man who somehow had all the time in the world for a little girl on a swing, and that's how I'll carry him with me.
I have so many wonderful memories of being with my dad. And it's been really interesting over the last little while to see people flowing through his house and realise that he paid attention to people besides me. When we were younger, we did so many fun things together. We'd go kayaking. On one occasion, I remember we're coming back from Whitianga, I think, and we saw some seagulls out in the water. We were on our way home from holiday, and I think it was Paul got the idea that we could go fishing if we followed the seagulls. So I was in the front of the kayak and Dad was in the back and Paul was in the middle fishing. And we had a wonderful time. On other occasions, kayaking with Dad in the surf, and he would always be in the back of the kayak and I'd be in the front. And as we came back towards the beach, he would be timing our entry to the beach, and he'd go, okay, now, and we'd paddle forward, and he'd paddle really hard, and I felt like I was actually sticking out with air underneath me, and Dad was in the wave, and we'd come in and then swing sideways, and I'd jump out and pull us in. Just so many wonderful memories of being rescued as a small child. When I was very little and very fair-haired, not much hair, I got into Paul's hair products, and I used the whole container on my head, just everywhere. And Paul was chasing me and saying, "You've used my hair product." It was called Brill Cream. And I was saying, "No, I didn't. And Dad intervened and he said, "What's going on?" And Paul said, "Jenny's used my Brill Cream." And Dad said, "Jenny, have you used Paul's Brill Cream?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Oh, Paul, Jenny said she hasn't used it." Paul's going, "You can see it in her hair." And my dad protected me from my own behaviour. And that wasn't the only time that he protected me from my own behaviour, actually. So I feel very blessed that Dad's been there right through my life, at lots of pivotal points. When I needed someone to be there for me, he turned up right when I needed somebody. Sometimes when I was jogging around Templeview in the evenings, he would come along on his push bike, and I would jog and he would bike. He had a 10-speed bike. So I feel very, very blessed to have had a father who loved us so much and tried so hard to be there for all of us. Usually people get up and say, "I think I was the favourite." I think I was the one that was under the radar. I know that there are lots of stories of people coming home from dates and Dad having different ways that he reacted to people being there, and I thought Kim would say that he would flick the lights on and off so people would get the cue that they should be coming in. But I know that I turned up one morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, and Dad was getting up to go to the temple, and he came walking in and he said, "Oh, you're up early." And I said, "Yeah." And there were no other questions asked. Yeah, so I'm just grateful for Dad.
We're now going to have a musical item by Paul, who's going to be playing the didgeridoo. Should be great. And then we'll have another opportunity for some memories to be shared.
That working? That was a good start, wasn't it? I played this for Dad, and he really liked it, so I thought we'd play it for him tonight. Hear that all right? I'll be speaking tomorrow, but won't have time to say lots and lots of things. But, you know, the girls are up here talking and sharing some fun memories, and we did have lots of fun times and some interesting times. I remember once in our house, it was always nice to open a new jar of Vegemite. As you know, you've been eating the Vegemite, well, we were as kids, and we weren't always good at scraping the butter off before the knife went back in the Vegemite jar, and you'd end up with this pretty buttery Vegemite towards the end of the jar, and we're thinking, oh, I don't want to eat that, but we weren't allowed to open the new jar until all the old jar was gone. Anyway, one day I was there, and I got to open the new jar of Vegemite. It was going beauty. So I opened the lid, and I had one of those old springy butter knives, which I dug into the Vegemite and went to lever it up, but the tip of the knife caught underneath the rim on the other side, and when it finally gave, it flipped up, and it flipped a big glob of Vegemite right in my eye. I wasn't wearing glasses back in those days. Anyway, I was going, oh, that's going to sting, but it didn't really hurt much. I thought, oh, I'll have to clean it out. So I'll go and get Dad. So I went walking down the hallway with this knife, with this black stuff on the tip and a big glob of black stuff in my eye, and I'm going, Dad, Dad. And he came out of the bedroom and he took one look at me, and of course he thought I'd shoved the knife in my eye and that all this black goo was coming out of it. And I always remember him running backwards and forwards in the hallway saying, quick, get the keys. He wanted to get the car and take me to the doctor. And I was watching thinking, what's he doing? And I heard him say, no, call an ambulance. And running backwards and forwards, and finally said, Dad, it's just Vegemite. You go, what? It's just Vegemite. What? How'd that get in your eye? Well, I flicked it in my eye. And, I always had a laugh thinking about when he thought I'd jammed the knife in my eye. I guess that would have been scary. On another occasion, we'd been, this was what happened when we were at Kenmore in the house that we rented up here when he was building his business. We'd been wrestling and mucking around, and he was chasing me, and I'd run out the front door and up the front of the house, and I thought, I need a shield. And I saw the rubbish bin there, one of the old tin rubbish bins with a tin lid, and I thought, right, I'll use the lid of that for a shield. And I picked it up quickly, and I held it by the handle, which was a mistake because the handle wasn't in the middle, it was down by the rim. So I was holding the shield up like this, and he came out and he sort of laughed and said, here we go, and he went poof like that, and he tapped the top of the lid, which of course flew back into my mouth and broke all my front teeth. And Mum was not very happy with Dad. Luckily for us, Dad's dad was a dentist, and we managed to sort of patch it up fairly well. Well, these are just some silly little memories I always have. I know on another occasion we were in bed again at Kenmore, and we'd gone to sleep, and suddenly Dad was yelling at us saying, turn the light off. And we're going, we turned the light off. And we sort of opened our eyes and the light was on. And we went, how'd that get on? He said, now get out of bed and turn the light off. And we went, oh. So how did it get on? Who turned the light on? I think we shared a bed, and then did you turn the light on? You know. And so finally I got out of bed and I'm walking across the room to turn the light off, and there was this boulder sitting in the middle of the floor. At least I thought it was a boulder, and walked around it, but we were looking at it and Dad started laughing, and he'd been driving home from somewhere and seen this turtle crossing the road. So he'd stopped and picked it up and caught the turtle, brought it home. It was a terrapin, left it in our room, turned the light on to make us get out of bed. So did we have a name for it? I think we had a name for it. Can anyone remember? No, I don't, maybe Yurtle the turtle, sounds right. You know, we had that turtle for a long time. They actually laid eggs and they hatched out, and we had baby turtles for a while. But yeah, lots of fun things and lots of fun experiences that he tried to give us.
That cute man's my husband, and we've been married for 30 years, so Blair's been my father-in-law for 30 years, which has been a really neat experience. He was a very kind father-in-law. He was very accepting of me. I knew he loved me. He I think appreciated my sense of humour. I used to like to make him laugh because he had such a great laugh. And as you know, he has had a fantastic voice, speaking voice. I think my children, especially Josh, really hoped that his voice would develop into Granddad's voice, you know, because that was a voice that was made for radio, and it was a voice that I think was known for public speaking. our children also, and once more it was Josh, hoped that he would have muscles like Grandad. They all wanted to be built like Grandad, to have Grandad's shoulders, and unfortunately a lot of them got Grandad's calves, especially the girls, and they weren't impressed by that. I was, just before we came over, I was in a big shopping mall trying to race around to get things ready, and I ran into one of Grandad's grandsons, and he told me he'd bought a suit and he'd wanted a slim fit suit, but he couldn't have it on the bottom because he had Grandad's thighs. And so that's always been the family joke. Obviously there's a lot of people that would love to have had his legs, and his voice and his beautiful white hair, you know, which I always admired. I think as long as I've known him, his hair has been white, and I've always said, oh, I don't want to go grey, I just want to go white. But it's never going to happen. So some of my memories of him are little tiny sort of snippet things here and there of different funny, quirky things, because he was quite quirky, and my husband has followed in some of those quirky traits. One of the things that I remember was when we first got married, this isn't a quirky thing, he was actually really excited that Paul and I were getting married, I think because Paul left it a little late to get married, and he proceeded to announce at our wedding reception how excited he was that Paul had finally got married to all of Paul's workmates, and he was quite honest with his feelings, and Paul was just mortified. And then a few months later, when he and Mum, Meryl, came over, it was August, and I know it's August because we have a thing in Brisbane called the Eka, and it's the exhibition, and it's like the winter show or the Easter show that we have here, and he rang up and he said to me, do you want to go to the Eka? And I didn't know even what the Eka was. I was a Kiwi girl going to the Eka for the first time, and he made it such a fun experience. Yeah, and I was utterly spoilt at the Eka. I got a hard-boiled egg, I got a show bag, I bought some felt pens, and we had a really fun time, and I think the Eka has gone downhill from there because Paul won't spend that kind of money when we go to the Eka. I've got to take a packed lunch, you know, so... other things that I remember about him that were kind of quirky, and I mentioned it to Faye today, I've never met someone that does their own fillings. And he would come over, and as he got older, and as people do, his teeth would break while he was visiting us, and he had his own little patch kit, and he would just patch it up, and then he'd say, there you go, good to go, I'll be good for a few weeks, and then I'll see the dentist. And that just blew my mind, that one. And so when he would break teeth, and I don't know, it seemed to happen with us all the time, maybe I made really chewy food, he would just patch his tooth up and off he'd go. I think maybe having a father as a dentist, and I think Paul asked once, and he said the dentist said it was fine for a while. I remember he would come and stay with us, and I'd try and cook his favourite food. So I would make him Scotch eggs, which he loved, and lamb cutlets, which we could never afford, but I'd make them when he came to stay because I knew he loved them, and he'd get really excited. I was something that he would remind me over and over and over again was how much he loved my grandparents. Didn't say anything about my mother, skipped a generation, but he loved my grandparents. He held them in incredible high regard. In fact, he had a little club with them, which members of the church would know about, that every Tuesday for 20 years, my grandparents, and he would remind me, he'd say, for 20 years they drove over those mountains from Carfia to get to Templeview to be part of his sealing group. And I think that's why I was approved on when I married Paul, was because of my grandparents and how much he loved them. And I reminded Paul, and Paul didn't remember this, but when Grandma, when Meryl passed away, Paul did know this part, but a week to the day after she passed, my own grandfather passed away, and I was actually flying home that day, and I went, they were in the same ward in the Waikato Hospital, and when I went to see my granddad, he had not been very conscious, and I leant down and I said, "I love you, Granddad," and he said, "I love you too." And which I was like, "Oh, that's nice," and everyone else said, "Well, he hasn't talked to us for days." And he passed, and so a week after Granddad buried his wife, Meryl, he helped dress my grandfather for his funeral, which I think is the ultimate act of service that you can do for someone, and must have been very hard for him to do that, to leave his grief to help us in our grief. And that was the kind of man he was. He really cared about people. I'll leave you with one funny story. When a few years ago, before he stopped, because he stopped coming to Australia to see us, we had to come here because it was all too much, but just before he stopped, he was visiting with us one day, and he was sitting on the couch, and Uncle David was there at the time as well. They'd come for lunch, and he was telling us a story about when he was much younger. He was swimming at Caloundra, which is a beautiful beach that we have in Queensland, and Ella's already starting to laugh, and he was telling us about how he was swimming in the water and he saw a man get taken by a shark, and he sort of stopped and he saw it happen, and he obviously was perfectly fine, made it to water, but he said he always remembered that, and he said to our children, "I wonder why the shark didn't take me." And my son Josh, the one that wants to have Granddad's deep voice and Granddad's muscles, turned around and said to him, "Because the shark took one look at your feet, Granddad, and said, 'I'm not eating that.'" And I'll leave you with that thought.
So a common theme tonight has been how Grandad had a special talent to make whoever he was spending time with feel like they were the most important person to him. And that was definitely true for me. And I know that that was one of his great attributes that helped him to create such a wonderful family and a wonderful legacy. The ability to make his children, his 34 grandchildren and his 30 great-grandchildren feel like at that time they were the most important thing to him. I was always so proud to be part of a large family, and he would visit us in Brisbane, and he would make these most amazing memories for us, things that we would not normally do, and we would all go together. And I remember the public would just be like, "What is this big group of people?" Like, we would go to the movies or to a theme park, and just moving around was a logistical nightmare, but it was magical, and they're some of my fondest memories. As a little girl, Auntie Zite reminded me that he told the most magnificent bedtime stories, and it would be the story of the three little pigs. And every time it would be the same thing, but we would get to choose the different houses that the three little pigs would visit. And he would use that voice, a great storytelling voice. You can see that the Johnstons all have a knack for storytelling, and they get that from their dad. Auntie La spoke about his muscles. He was also very proud of how fit he was. I grew up with four brothers, I should say, and 3 sons and lots of cousins, most of whom quite liked sport. But when I visited him a few months ago, he checked in with me. He's like, "Can any of those boys do a one-arm pull-up?" He had a bet. He had a bit of a wager with all of the family, that he had some money down and he was waiting to be able to pay someone to do a one-arm pull-up like he could do. But, you know, despite their talents, no one in the family's been able to do it. So that's just a true test to his physical prowess. He was a great man in many areas. But the thing that I probably remember most of my granddad is the way he hugged me. It was like no other. He would squeeze and then he would squeeze a little bit harder. A hug like Granddad was the most special thing, and I'm forever grateful that I got to experience those hugs, and I love him.
I would like to once again thank all those who have shared some memories. We have another musical item now, and that'll be by Josiah, Kinga and family. And then after that, we'll have some more opportunities for those in the room to share some memories.
I'm not sure when it started. It might have been singing Christmas carols to Granddad or something, but at some stage we started singing songs to Granddad quite often when we'd visit him, and we're going to sing a song that I'd heard that he liked, and we've sung to him a few times, and I think that some of my aunties and uncles will remember. It's called Little Purple Pansies. It's from the children's songbook. I've never heard anybody sing it in primary ever, but he liked it, so we'll sing it.
Little purple pansies touched with yellow gold, growing in one corner of the garden old. We are very tiny but must try. Just one spot to gladden you and I.
While I'm up here, I'll share some memories too. I remember Granddad's hugs, and as I was growing older, he'd give me bear hugs. That's what he'd call them, and he'd hug pretty tight. But I also think that he could have hugged me a lot tighter. I think he matched how hard I'd hug him. He was really loving, and he wouldn't dwell on some of the negative things that he could have. I remember when I was a kid, the girl next door and I were playing on the trampoline, and we found that there were some rotten apples under the apple tree next to the trampoline, and we smeared them all over the trampoline. And Granddad wasn't happy, but he never really brought it up after that. Somebody had to clean that up. I don't think it was us, and it would have been a bit of work. And another time we were cleaning up his yard, and there was this boulder in the front that he really liked, and I thought we'd clean that up really well, and I took all the mushrooms off it and all the moss, but it turned out that he actually really liked the mushrooms and the moss, and he was really disappointed, but he kept having us come over and clean up his yard, but not that boulder anymore. And he would listen enthusiastically and ask questions throughout my life, kind of like some of my cousins have said, and indicate his interest. And even when I was, in my 20s coming over, he'd be asking me questions. wanting to know about my love life, wanting to know about whether I was dating anybody or things like that. And it was, I'm so grateful that I've been able to spend time with Grandad and feel that love in so many different ways.
I just wanted to tell a story of Cedar Creek, which is the creek that runs by the Sanford property in Brisbane that Mum and Dad currently live in and that I got to grow up in. And Grandad still always would call up Mum and want to hear about what animals we'd seen in the creek and what we'd had in the paddocks, and sometimes that was platypus in the creek, which is really lucky, and wallabies in the paddock. And my first memory of meeting Nani Faye's around Cedar Creek as well. And platypus often sort of, well, they're usually up bright and early in the morning, sort of away by 7:30, or they're sort of about 5:30 to dark, and must have been about midday. And Grandad got the idea in his head that it was a great time to go and look for a platypus, which it certainly wasn't. And I'm sure we probably said maybe not, but when he gets an idea into his head, he was pretty keen. So we went down to the bridge at first, and they're only around here, and I think someone had said, we've seen them here before, and there's none here, but maybe there's one. Grandad thought just a little bit further upstream, and there used to be a track beside the creek, and that was no longer, and it was just thick lantana. And so I'm not sure how long we spent, but it felt like hours on a pretty hot day from memory, bashing through the bush, looking for a platypus, and finally deciding that there wasn't going to be one because it wasn't the right time. And it was just one of those funny memories and a fond one. And it's Nani sort of said that she was absolutely petrified, and I thought it was really brave that you came with us anyway, even though it was probably not a great idea, and sort of makes me think now just how willing you have been to really look after Grandad, and that's something that we all really appreciate. And I'm sure many other people have got some great memories of Grandad and going on adventures. The other thing I wanted to speak about was just how many memories of Grandad, of him just being very, very generous with his time and with his attention. And it felt like Christmas every time he came to Brisbane as a kid, and we'd all get to pile in the different cars and go out to Dreamworld and run an absolute muck. And some very special memories with all the cousins and with Grandad. And as everyone else has said, having Grandad stay at your house and bouncing you on his knee and singing you different songs and listening to his lovely voice was very special as well. So yeah, just some special memories.
For those of you that don't know, me and my brother are twins, and I guess when we were little we gave our mum a pretty hard time, I guess as twin boys do. One day Grandad saw us giving mum a bit of a hard time, and he grabbed us both and laid down on the bed with us, and he put his arms around both of our sort of necks, kind of having us in a little bit of a headlock. And then he just quietly explained to us about how he lost his mum at a very early age, and how important mums were to him. And he hoped that as little boys that we would respect our mum and that we would be good sons to our mum.
And even as an adult, whenever I'd see Grandad, he would remind me, remember that time that you guys were being little rat bags and I laid down on the bed with you and put my arms around you and told you how important mums are, and are you still looking after your mum? And so I think when I think about Grandad, I think about somebody that absolutely loved his family and that really just wanted the best for them always, and even as he was getting older was still looking out for my mum, his daughter, and hoping that we were always doing the best for her. Thanks.
So my name's Paul Fell. I'm married to Kim. For those of you that are friends of the family, I'm grateful to be here and wanted to share some thoughts. And I should say, Kerry, our son, who's just preceded me, I think that message from Grandad did sink in most of the time. There were a few slip-ups here and there, but certainly impressive. I guess Grandad was my father-in-law for a long time, 45 years, but also my boss. And so I am very grateful to him as a mentor, both as a father and a husband to me as a young man married to his eldest daughter. And as a mentor, as a wonderful entrepreneur and generous man that wanted to help people. And that's left a great impression on me as a young man and now as an older man, reflecting on the memory of this wonderful person in front of us. But I wanted to share with you, Blair lived here, of course, and he would come every 3 months to check on us as we were running the trading post, which was, aside from his family and the church, the most precious thing in his life. And so we felt that responsibility running this business. And in this particular era, mobile phones were just becoming in use, and Grandad just really latched onto this technology, and so he was always on his mobile phone. He had it on a little clip on the side of his belt, and when he'd come and visit us at the trading post, we'd go out and we'd check together, Blair and I, some of the displays in malls and these sorts of things to make sure the papers were being displayed properly, and he had his little mobile phone. And he said to me, I'm going to the bathroom in this mall. And I said, okay. And so I was just kind of there, and so I thought, I'll go to the bathroom as well. And so he's in a cubicle, and I'm about 3 cubicles down, and my mobile phone goes. And it was Grandad calling me from his cubicle. And he said to me, where are you? Which was a common question. And I said, I'm 3 cubicles down the row in the toilet. What are you calling me for? He said, is everything all right? And I said, yeah, I hope it is with you too. And that has stuck with me. But that was just Blair. He was both very inspiring and very unique. He lived his life in a very inspiring way, but in his way. And to me, that was very inspiring in many ways. and I'm very grateful for his kindness to me personally as a young son-in-law coming into a big family, and also for the way he made me feel welcome in that fairly daunting experience along with Merrill. Those memories are special and will remain with me forever, and I'm very grateful to this wonderful man. Thank you.
We'll now have another musical item, and that'll be by Riley, Rosie, Jerem and Zephyr. After that musical item, we'll have another opportunity to share some memories.
So I'm going to short while I'm up here, because I don't think I'll get back up again. My name is Riley. I am Zeidel's second eldest. And I was very lucky that over my childhood I got to spend quite a bit of time with Grandad, because I would often fly over for Christmas and for holidays. So I have very fond memories with Sarai and Rebecca and having sleepovers at Grandad's house. And we would all either be upstairs, or I feel like maybe we were downstairs once. We all shared a bed. And we always used to think it was lots and lots of fun. I also have some very good memories of Grandad coming over to Brisbane. And I think they're fond memories because I quite liked food when I was younger, and we always, when we picked Grandad up from the airport, we'd go to Macca's, and I just thought it was the coolest thing because it was all my cousins there, and we got to order whatever we want, which most of the time I got a Big Mac, and it was the only time I could ever get one. And then Grandad would do his trips over to each family, and we got to go to Sizzlers, and then he would read us stories or share stories, which were often funny stories of my mum growing up. And there's some beautiful memories that I get to share, but I have two actually. First favourite memory would be last year, the last day that we were in Hamilton in September. We had gone to Raglan, and Scotty, who is my now fiance, proposed to me at the Gorge, but it was the last day that we were seeing Grandad, and he had planned it so that I could show Grandad the ring and I could tell him in person. But we got to Grandad's house and there had been quite a bit of wind, and so, as you can imagine, at Grandad's house, or Grandad and Nana Faye's house, there was leaves everywhere, and so we got there and Nana Faye was raking, and so I had to help put all the leaves away, and Scotty was looking at me because my ring was a bit too big. He thought that I was going to lose it, which I probably would have, so I got some gloves. He's like, do you think that we should just go and tell them now and then we can come back out? And I said, no, we've got to do it now. And then my second favourite was one that I don't necessarily remember, but every time we would see Grandad, he was very happy to share it with me when Grandma was unwell, and she had not been saying hello to many people because she was in and out, but when I walked in, she knew exactly who I was and said hello and said, hello, Riley. So every time I saw Grandad, it was a story that he was quite happy to share with me and that I loved hearing. He always had a very special way of making you feel very loved. And I love him.
I'm young enough that I think I only really remember Grandad as a Grandad well into his Grandad era. I remember him, I'm sure lots of us remember him doing jungle rides where he'd sit us on his lap and then sing songs, and then we'd be dodging things thrown by monkeys and splashing through rivers and going on an adventure with him. And I kind of always remember him, he had his favourite spot to sit, and we'd come over and he'd always come out and sit down with us. And I've never been particularly entrepreneurial or anything like that, but whenever he'd hear that I had interactions with the business, he'd get very interested and thinking, all right, now did you write down the number, the date and the time that you spoke with this person? Did you get their name? And did you make sure that you were speaking to the person in charge? I think it's a $30 thing. I think customer service has this one. But he was always very, very kind and always came out and sat down with us. This last little while, just lots of memories have been coming because I've always lived in Hamilton except for short stints, and so he's always been there. When I was a teenager, he married me, and loved to see my children come over and give them rides on his knee as well.
My earliest memories of Grandad are me talking to him very enthusiastically and him apparently not understanding and saying, "Is that so?" And I think that was how most of our conversations went for about a year when I was probably 3 or 4 years old. It just constantly, "Is that so?" over and over. Another thing I remember about Grandad is that he seemed to really like animals, and the animals seemed to like him. And so he'd go outside the house and be really interested by things like the fantails. And the fantails seemed to be interested in him as well. And I think he felt like he had some sort of relationship with the animals out there, which is nice to see. And the birds at the lake knew him, and they'd come over as soon as they saw the car, and he hopped out of the car. A whole troop of, I think they were swans or geese or something, chasing after him. I know I've got another good story about Grandad. I remember when I was a kid, he wanted to give me a birthday present, so I think he called up Mum and said he wanted to give me a BB gun. And Mum, imagining I think that it was little plastic BBs, said yes, but it was a full-on slug gun. But he'd already got it for me at that point, so there's no going back. But, I really enjoyed having that. When I got a bit older, like everyone else said, he was always really curious about our interests and made sure to make us feel like we're important, and I really loved him for that. And I think everyone that knew him knew that he loved them too.
Hi, I'm Maya. I'm the number 5 child, and I think I'm one of the reasons why he had that lovely white hair. Grandad was a great teacher, and he led by example, and he obviously taught us many lessons. A few of the things that he taught us how to do was how to use a blowpipe with a blow dart in it. He taught us how to do water divining. He taught us how to shoot a variety of different weapons, which was always fun. But other things that he taught us, he always stayed true to his principles. We used to go out on a Monday evening sometimes to movies for family home evening, and one of our favourite movies was Sound of Music, hence the musical item that the grandchildren all sang. But he would take us sometimes to other movies, and we'd all be sitting in there watching the movie, and then we'd feel this look coming down the line, and Grandad would say, "This movie is not right for us." And we'd all be sitting there going, "Oh," because we knew that would mean that the whole family would have to stand up and walk out in the middle of the movie. So he stayed true to his principles, even when he'd paid money for things, except for James Bond. When we went to go and see James Bond, he would say, "All right, everybody close your eyes," for the beginning part where there was all the ladies. And then he'd say, "All right, now you can open your eyes." And for the first few movies, I'm like, "Okay, that's good." And then afterwards I'd think, well, how does he know when we can open our eyes? Grandad endured living through 7 teenagers really well. He would say, when we were probably getting a little bit hot under the collar at home, he would say things like, "I'm just going for a walk around the block." So instead of continuing and engaging in an argument, which was probably me wanting to argue, he would just take himself away from the situation and give us each a moment to have a little think about what was going on, and he'd come back and regroup. He always treated us with kindness and made each of us feel special. He always was interested in what we were doing. And yes, he did do interesting things, like some of the others have mentioned. We were all about to all go into Dreamworld, and there must have been like 30 of us or something, and he hopped out of his car and he said, "Oh, I have broken a tooth." So then we had everybody standing in the car park while he got out his glue and glued a bit of tooth in, and then when we had to wait for it to set, he goes, "Oh," tested it, and then we were all allowed to go on our way. So he taught us how to be self-reliant, I guess. Another example that he learnt off his own dad was if you start something, you should finish it. He went off to Animal Husbandry College out at Gatton, which is in a rural place in Australia, and he got partway through his studies and he didn't do so well, and he went home and he told his dad, "I don't think I want to do this," and his dad said, "No, you've started this, you need to go back and finish it." So he did do that. He went back and he finished his studies, and he was really glad that he did go back and finish that. So that's something that I've learnt when I've been doing things and I'm thinking that it's hard and it's just too hard for me. I think, oh well, that was the lesson that we can pass down through the generations, that if you start something, you should finish it to the best that you can. Dad was always interested in all of our children and our grandchildren, and now on to the great-grandchildren. So you can tell that he has a great love for family. And he showed us by example to look outwardly as well, outwardly to the community and to friends. Each Christmas, I know that they like to do things for the community. He and Mum and he and Faye like to do things for the community. But he also taught us to do things for the community as well. We would go off with our bottles of sparkly and drop it to people who might have been on their own. So yeah, he was a great teacher, and I'm grateful for what he did for us.
I was trying to think of my first memories of Grandad. I really hope this wasn't a 6-year-old's dream. I'm pretty sure the story is real. When he saved my life, and we were going up an escalator. I don't know why, but it was just me and Grandad. I think he was taking me to get a present for something, and at Capalaba Park Shopping Centre. And my shoelace got caught in an escalator, and I nearly got swallowed by it. But he saved my life and pulled it out. The other things I could distinctly remember is, I don't know if the older cousins can remember, we used to always go to the airport to go wait for him. And there's the one thing that you can always, if you're the first one to find him, you always saw through the frosted glass his orange suit cover thing that you could see over the top of his trolley. And then I thought I'd also tell a story. I hope Nana Faye, I hope you don't mind. Rosie and I went to Jordan a while ago, and we bought a little vial of water from the Jordan River and gifted it to Nana Faye and Grandad, and Grandad drank some of it.
That's my son. And I'm married to Maya, one of Blair's daughters. I was scared of Blair before I even met him, because Maya filled him with those sporting stories that, and made me feel a bit inadequate. But one thing that she said was that he's good at one-arm combat, and I thought, she meant unarmed combat. But I was thinking, I might be able to take him. But I was thinking what I might say today, and I was looking the other day. I was scrolling through the movies that I've purchased, and I realised that all of the movies that are the ones that I really like are people with integrity, and that's how I feel about Grandad, that he was a man of integrity.
Thank you once again to all those who have shared some wonderful memories. We'll now have another musical item by Ben and Ella Marsden, and after Ben and Ella we'll have our final opportunity for this evening to share some thoughts and memories.
Just some context, if anyone's wondering which side of the family the Marstons are from, we're from Kinga's side of the family, the adopted Polish side. Whenever we would visit Granddad, he always asked us to sing the song for him.
Heavenly Father, are you really there? And do you hear and answer every child's prayer? Some say that heaven is far away, but I feel it closer on me as I pray. Heavenly Father, I remember now something that Jesus told disciples long ago. Suffer the children to come to me. Father, in prayer I'm coming now to thee. Pray, he is there. Speak, he is listening. You are his child. His love now surrounds you. He hears your prayer. He loves the children. Of such is the kingdom of heaven.
Heavenly Father, are you really there? And do you hear and answer every child's prayer? Some say that heaven is far away, but I feel it closer of me as I pray. Heavenly Father, I remember now something that Jesus told disciples long ago. Suffer the children to come to me. Father, in prayer I'm coming now to thee.
Okay. I'm Jenny's daughter, Rebecca, Blair's granddaughter. I don't have any specific funny story or memory I want to share, but I just know that growing up I had lots of fun memories of spending time with Granddad. I'm an NFA and often with family, going to the movies and having special treats like Maltesers that otherwise we wouldn't have. And going out sometimes on birthdays, take us out to Pizza Hut, and it was very special. It's just really nice spending time with Granddad and with family and hearing his chuckle and laughs. And when I went on my mission, coming back, and he was very supportive and telling me how he'd been watching along when my airplane was going along and keeping track of where I was and stuff along with my mum. And it's just, I did feel very loved, and I really appreciated the space that he had for us and for our family, and always making time for us.
Good evening, I'm Hank, I'm Jenny's husband. Just thinking of two things that I could relate. One is, at some stage, Jenny got worked cleaning at for Blair. She worked and she just did some part-time work there, cleaning the house. making it easy for him. And one time, Jenny came home and something had gone wrong. And there had been this little jumpy spider in the toilet room, and Jenny vacuumed it up. And then she mentioned it to Blair, and it didn't go down well. Apparently he had a relationship with the spider and was very disappointed that it was gone. So that, I think that kind of is one of the lovely quirky things about Dad. I think a really big thing in Dad's life was that he lived a very spiritually informed life. A lot of what he did came from a spiritual feeling and guidance. So there was this one thing that he told us about. He went to the dentist, and at the time, it was quite a while ago, they used to put a kind of a ring thing around the tooth and tighten it up before they put a filling in. They'd screw it tight, and he was sitting back in the dentist chair like that, and somehow that little ring, a steel ring that he was being screwed in, came off into his mouth and it dropped right down, and he felt it hit in the bottom of his lung. It went right down the breathing, as he was breathing in like that, and it tapped down the bottom. So the dentist was horrified and told him not to move, and I think he called an ambulance. And Dad had this strong impression. I think he expressed it as standing on his head. Okay, so he thought he should go upside down and that it might fall out. And the dentist said, no, don't do that. That's not what you do. And he felt this impression again. He said, no, I really feel strongly that I should go upside down. So he did it anyway, against the dentist's better judgment. And the little ring thing dropped out of his lung because he was upside down and landed on the roof of his mouth, and he put his hand in and pulled it out. And Dad said that there was like an amazing thing to have happened so simply, and that it got printed in a dentist journal somewhere. Also another thing, I said that his life was spiritually informed. He loved serving as a sealer in the temple. He loved being a patriarch. If everybody who'd been married by him in this room or got patriarchal blessings, probably, half of the people here. So it's just a really, really big thing in his life. He absolutely loved being a sealer, and he really, really loved being a patriarch. And I don't think that there's any other patriarch that I can imagine on the planet that would be like him. He was so unique, I think. It was wonderful. It was a really wonderful thing. That's all I have to say.
Good evening, everyone. I remember when I was about 13, I came and stayed with Grandad for a little while. I can't remember how long it was, but a few weeks. And during school holidays, it was shortly after Grandma had passed away, so Grandad was on his own. It was only a year or so since Grandma had passed. And so it was just me and Grandad hanging out for a few weeks. And we had to find things to do. And so we went on a few adventures. I remember watching copious amounts of war movies. He had this cabinet filled of all of these old Tora and Rats of Tobruk. These are the kind of movies that have like an intermission, pretty old school. And we'd spend time up at the farm. And while we were up at the farm one day, he decided to give me my first driving lesson as a 13-year-old. And he showed me how to operate the van. So this was in the van. And he showed me how to operate the van. And then he left. And was off in the cabin, up in the barn, tinkering away, doing something. And said, you can just cut some laps around the paddock. And so, and actually there was a trailer on the van as well. So I was driving around, doing a few laps, and I got to a point and I was like, okay, well now maybe I can practice reversing. And so I stopped and I put the car into reverse, and as I start going back slowly, all of a sudden I hear this crunch. And I look around, and of course the trailer had spun around, and I jackknifed the trailer and crunched the back of the van. And I thought, oh gosh, and my heart sunk. And so I sheepishly had to drive the van back around to the barn, and was very nervous about telling Grandad that I'd effectively banged up the back of the van. And I came out, and he had a look at the van, at the back of it, and I was waiting for his response, and he just looked at me and he said, "Jackknife Jake." And then burst into laughter. I thought, okay, I can live with that. So the rest of the trip he referred to me as Jackknife Jake, and had a good laugh at my expense. But I appreciated that from Grandad. It's been really nice hearing all the stories from the grandchildren that I can relate to, having those same experiences. And so I'm really grateful for the time that I had with Grandad.
I'm Josh's poor son, the one who wanted Grandad's deep voice and muscly body. From what I remember about Grandad is every time I'd see him, he'd always have a different concept or idea that he would throw out to us, like the water divining rods, or sometimes he would talk to us about colour therapy. And I was always confused about what he was talking about, but it was an interesting concept nonetheless. We'd also see sometimes, if he took us upstairs, we'd have some sort of perpetual motion machine that he had that he'd be showing us, and that was always very cool. But I always saw him, whenever we did something fun, I always thought we had some ulterior motive. Like when I went to New Zealand when I was 12, he took me on a flight simulator machine, and then when Blair went 2 years before, Blair went on some sort of plane device, and I always thought that he wanted one of us to become a pilot, which is kind of interesting. And I always thought it was cool, and he was always talking to us about planes, but I always enjoyed when I saw Grandad, hearing all his different special interests and different stories. So, yeah, thank you.
I'm Mike Collins, Liesl's husband. Blair was always thoughtful. He, in our early days, remember as an introduction, he had a little Fiat F19, I think it was, and I had a Mazda RX-4, so he was quite into cars. And so this day he wanted to take me for a ride in his little Fiat X19. And we drove around some of the back roads, and he was telling me how he used to go maybe 100 miles an hour or something like that, but he was going pretty fast. We weren't going that speed. And he'd open the window and he'd say, "Put your hands out." So I'd have my hands out the window, and it was just nice that he took me in as his son-in-law, and we're really grateful over the years for his generosity and love. Sure we'll miss him, and he's a great man. Some of the things that the grandchildren have been saying about how they loved excursions. That was one of the things we loved. That it was always a great outing just to go and see them when they flew in from Brisbane and go and see them at the airport, and we'd all shoot out for Macca's, and he'd shout everyone. And then in the weekends when he wasn't working, he'd take the whole family out and we'd go to like Dreamworld and those sorts of places. So we really appreciate that, the memories and his love, and we'll miss them.
I have so many fond memories of Grandad that I wouldn't even be able to share them all. But some of his quirky stories have been coming to mind over the past few days. Those that knew Grandad would know that he did not like, sorry, it's getting very hot all of a sudden, he did not like going to the doctor. Nana Faye would always be really supportive in trying to help him make the right decision and eventually get him there. And one time he was having terrible pain in his hip and he wouldn't go to the doctor, and he wouldn't go, and I think it got to the point he may actually have gone in an ambulance. And then Mum was updating us with what was going on, and I think they'd given him some good pain relief, and Grandad had decided that actually he was feeling much better and he thought that he could go home, and in an attempt to convince the doctor that he was okay, was hopped out of bed and jumping up and down and trying to hop on one leg to say, look, I'm fine, I can go home now. And when his test results came in, he had a huge abscess in his hip, and they had to replace the whole thing. But he really put on a whole dance trying to convince the doctor that he didn't need to be there and that he could go home. And another, I hope this one is okay to tell, I'm sure it's fine, funny story that Jay and I have of Grandad is their beloved cat, Tabby, that I don't know that Grandad was keen on him at first, but they grew to be very close over the years, and one day we got a message from Nana saying that Tabby had passed on, and we went over straight away, and Mum had beat us to it, was there with the kids, trying to comfort them while they were processing that loss. And we got there and I could feel that Tabby was starting to sort of cool down a little bit and got a little bit solid, and we tried to arrange Tabby's body all nicely, and Nana asked us if Jay would come over later, and they picked out a nice little spot in the backyard where there used to be a lot more vines out there than there are now. And Jay got the shovel and he dug a hole, and we had carefully put Tabby's body in a bag and everything and put it in this hole, and Jay was carefully placing the dirt onto it. And Grandad stepped up and he looked and he said, well, you've got to make sure that you really just kind of pack it in. And we were like, oh, and Nana's like, oh, okay, this is fine. We were all so shocked, and it kind of did really help lighten the situation. That's what I've got.
I am one of the granddaughters. I'm Zaital's daughter, and me and my son have been debating the whole time whether to tell the story or not. But he's looking at me going.
But I was very lucky to spend lots of time with Granddad, with Mike and Shelley, Mum and Dad, also making efforts to see Granddad, and Nana Faye. And I went to introduce Tyler, which I was nervous about because Tyler can be a bit sassy. But I think Granddad appreciated it. But he got really excited to show Oni a laser gun, and Oni was 5, and he turns it on and hands it over, and Oni is then kind of shooting it round, and we're kind of ducking and weaving, going, oh, and Nana Faye's like, oh, Granddad, I don't think he should have that. And he's like, we'll go outside with the blow dart. And so we go outside with the blow dart, and there's little cats and birds everywhere, and he's trying to get it working, and we're all kind of like, I think we should come inside now. But that was really a fond memory of Granddad meeting Oni and Tyler and spending some nice time with Nana Faye and getting to, I guess, come to the house, which would be called the fairy house, and it's, yeah, very fond memories, and we will definitely miss him, and we love him lots, and we love you lots too, Nana Faye.
I'm Blair, I'm Paul's son. Every time I'd visit with Granddad, he'd always tell me something really interesting. He always had a different story to tell me. I remember he told me how the TV was invented by Philo Farnsworth, and went into great detail and told me, I can't remember it all now, but how, even down to how it worked. I remember he told me all about how music can heal people, and he told me about sitar music in particular. I remember he had a great love of Ravi Shankar, and he'd always bring this up when he'd see me. We visited with him a few months ago, and he asked me a lot about what I'd been doing, and I remember how interested he was in hearing from me and learning from me. And I guess I was honoured that he'd pay as much interest to me. And I guess that's how he'd cultivated such a breadth of knowledge, is because I feel like every time he met someone, he thought, what can I learn from them? And that really inspires me.
I'm Eve, I'm Matt's daughter. I've been sitting down, watching my Fitbit, watching my heart rate, because I don't want to not say something. But my favourite memories of Granddad will always be coming to his house, probably most of the grandkids, and it's such a magical house. I don't remember going to Dreamworld. I don't know where I missed out, but I don't really have any Dreamworld stories. But most of my favourite memories from Granddad are now that I'm older and I've moved to Hamilton, so I was closer. And a common theme that everyone's brought up is how he paid so much interest to everyone's lives. And so since living here, I've been able to introduce my partner to Granddad, my partner Gideon, and as we would get to see Granddad, he would notice that Gideon had quite a lot of tattoos, and Granddad liked to pay a lot of interest to these, so much so that he asked Gideon to take his shirt off and describe every tattoo to him. And he also asked Gideon what his bicep circumference was. And yeah, those will always be my favourite memories of Granddad, and all the interesting questions he had for us.
Hello everyone, I'm Hunter, Eve's sister, Matt's son. Can't let her be the only one up here. So my earliest memory with Granddad was, funnily enough, being probably 6 years old, standing in his kitchen, and he's handed me a pistol with a laser on it. And he's teaching me to just hold it straight and how to keep it there. And we lived in Oz, so we'd only fly over every year or so, and he'd always make an effort to take us out to the farm shooting. And something recently that happened too was I was looking for a car, and I was like, oh, I might not buy it, but then I remembered a story my dad told me was that he always wanted to buy this Lotus Elise, this nice fancy sports car, but he never did. But one day he decided he would. He went and tried it out, but he couldn't quite fit out of it, so he never did. So I thought of that, and I thought I may as well buy it. Yeah.
My name's Ella, I'm Paul's daughter. I think I'm part of the younger generation of grandkids. So for a lot of us, he's been too old to fly to Australia our whole lives. I think he had great grandkids by the time I was born. So I remember my earliest memory of Granddad is I was in grade 2, and it was you get to fly to New Zealand, you get to meet your Granddad. I mean, I might have met him earlier, but that was the earliest I remembered him. And I think I'd heard all these stories from my dad, and he sounded like a Willy Wonka bushman. There was always guns, there was always animals. He had 8,000 animals as a kid. He never remembered the name of any of them. So I was really excited to meet my granddad, and I remembered pulling up, and he lived in a forest. I don't know how he'd done it. It was Hamilton, New Zealand. There was grass everywhere you went, but we pulled up, and there was this little archway, and I met this man with the most wonderful voice I'd ever heard, and I finally understood why Josh wanted it so bad. And then I met Nana Faye, and he had such a gentle, beautiful voice, and it just reminded me of the last time we were in New Zealand, which was in April. We were sitting with him, and his hearing wasn't the best, and somehow Blair was able to magically communicate with him. But I thought, I want to ask him a question, because he can't understand anything I'm saying, so I'd rather hear from him. And I asked Granddad, what inspired you to start the Trading Post? And he described the story of, can't remember if it was Melbourne or Sydney, but he'd gone down and he had met someone who'd started the Trading Post there. And he got in a bunch of tips. It was a lady, actually. She had started the original Trading Post, and he said, I want to go and do this in Brisbane. And he said that she had given him a secret weapon. And he went on to describe the secret weapon as one of her employees who had a really sexy voice, in Granddad's words, which I never in my life thought I'd hear him say that word. And he just had this employee with a really nice voice, so whenever someone would call up, she was on the phones, and apparently that was the secret weapon to starting the Trading Post. So you're all welcome for everything, for that one lady. Thank you.
Hello everybody, I am Zephyr, I'm Zidal's oldest son, and I'm one of the younger generation cousins as well, so my memories are a little bit limited to our couple of trips over. So I thought I'd be remiss if I didn't say anything, so I wanted to share something else. I studied dentistry down on the Gold Coast. We live in Brisbane, and the clinic that we work in, we see patients every day. There's probably about 500 patients that come in a day for treatment, and one day we had my clinic partner and I had a patient, and I could see she was Māori, so we started talking about where do you live, like in New Zealand, and she had told me that she lives in Temple View, and I obviously perked up a little bit, got excited, and I was like, oh, my granddad lives in Temple View, I've got family there, and then we did a bit more talking, and she knew Granddad, and I was very, very proud and excited to say that that's Blair Johnston's my granddad, very excited, and her mum was being treated by just the person next to us, so she came in, Timmy, my friend, and they told us some stories about how they knew Granddad, and I just think it's very impressive how in another country, in another city, the people he's touched are so ready to spread the stories and the love that he shared with them. So I just thought that was something very beautiful.
Finn, Matt's son, Hunter's brother. I don't really remember too much because I'm one of the younger generation. When I was younger, the last rod no one was home. I do remember most Easters we would go over and visit, and just like walking into his house
like walking across that little bridge he has, it's just a magical place, and he's just had this magical aura around him, and it was amazing being able to speak to him, and I wish I could remember more, and yeah, I want to strive to be like him.
I didn't feel any pressure to come up here. But, I just wanted to say it always felt good after my rugby games, and if I got an award or anything, my dad would always send a photo to Papua and Nanafe, and just hearing that just made me feel like really special and appreciated. Thank you.
The kids gave me the nod. So first of all, in Caloundra, before they had the shark nets, that shark actually brushed by my dad. He said they're not smooth, it was like sandpaper. So it came past him and actually bit somebody that was in shallower water, and it was very disturbing for him. But yeah, he did have terrible toes. In relation to the movies, he somehow had a radar, and if Mum and I were watching TV, if there was going to be anything remotely inappropriate, Dad would come in and open the door right at that moment, and he'd say, "This show is not for us." And Mum would be, "This is the only thing in this whole show," and he'd be, "It's not for us." And so of course we'd have to change the channel. Yes, my kids were from the younger generation, and so we did have to visit Dad, and I learned that the grandkids definitely had a different relationship with Dad than us kids. On one occasion, we were up at the temple. The kids were all in their Sunday best. The grass was nice and dewy and slippery, so they all decided to see who could slide down the temple hill the furthest. So they were running and sliding, and Hunter and Eve weren't too bad. Finlay and Bailey not so much. I was over there just by myself with the kids, and I was quite concerned about how muddy they were getting. Dad was laughing his head off, and I was thinking, if this was me, I would be in trouble. But he thought it was great. We do have photos of Bailey and Finlay sitting under cushions as I washed their clothes at Nana Faye's house. But I later found out that Dad didn't quite like going to church as a little kid. And so sometimes, after he was all dressed up, he'd find a muddy puddle to sit in so that he didn't have to go to church.
Thank you everyone for your wonderful thoughts and memories. We'll finish this evening with a final musical item, and that'll be provided by the Wormsley family. After that musical item, our benediction will be offered by Jake Fell.
Just to introduce the item, Blair was in our community for 50 years, and those of you that knew him, he was a great man of faith and had an incredible faith and belief in the Spirit. So I have no doubt that when he meets his Maker and Heavenly Father and Jesus, they will say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. So the song that the family's going to sing is about our Saviour Jesus Christ and his beautiful name and the great belief that we have in the gospel of Jesus Christ. So I leave it to the family.
The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, worship his holy name. Yeah, I worship your holy name. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. You have no rival. You have no equal. Now and forever, God, you reign. Yours is the kingdom. Yours is the glory. Yours is the name above all names. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship his holy name. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my never before. Oh my soul, worship his holy name. The name of Jesus.
Our dear Father in heaven, we come before thee this evening and give thee thanks for this time that we've had to meet together as family and friends and to reflect on the wonderful memories that we've each had with Granddad and the impact that he's had in our life. We're grateful for the cherished times that we've had together. We're grateful for our family, for the blessing that they are to each of us. We're grateful for everything that Granddad has done for us, for the lessons that he shared with us, for the example that he set with us, for the love that he gave us. We pray that we will continue to be able to enjoy this time together as we celebrate this great man and the life that he lives. We pray for thy Spirit to comfort us, to be with us, especially Nana Faye. We are so grateful for her, and we ask you to bless her. Pray that thy Spirit will guide us as we depart now, that we might depart in safety. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Hello again, everyone. Sorry. Just in the room next door, we invite you all to go and have a hot chocolate. Just across, right out that door there. everyone. Hello. Just at the request of the family now, we're just going to move Brother Johnston's down the hallway just for into a room. So if we could just have everyone be quiet just while we do that for now. We might shut that door. Thank you. Thank you, Yvonne.
Yeah, I'll